So hopefully you can now all see my screen. Yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. So what I want to talk about briefly in the next 10 minutes, and I'm very happy to pick up this conversation with you on individual bases after the meeting today, is a bit of a sort of lockdown business review. It's the overview of that. And the purpose of that is to try and help you navigate the crisis situation so that you can emerge from that with sustainable and recession-proof business. So I think at the moment, one of the things that's holding people back in getting anywhere is the lack of certainty in what's going on at the moment. So I thought I'd take a little look at the sort of things of what do we know to see if that can help focus our minds on where we can move next. So one thing that I think is sort of agreed, vaccine is most likely 12 to 18 months away. There will be a phased release from lockdown. But even with that, that brings around more questions like, which market sectors will return first? How will that be managed? But most importantly for all of you, the question is, how does that impact my business? We know that there's around 4 million people furloughed at the moment, costing the government about £10 billion a month. And again, the questions that come out of that, how long can this be sustained? What are the alternatives to furlough? And how is this going to impact on my business? But I think the one thing that we can all agree on, and is without question, we are heading for the worst recession we have seen in 80 years, worst recession since the Second World War. And if we go back over that screen of what do we know, in some ways it doesn't help us. There's an awful lot of uncertainty, even with the things that we do know. So the success stories that I talked about very briefly earlier, there are very specific areas that we have looked at to help them identify what they can do. And the basis of that conversation has been talking about, we know the future is not what it used to be, and starting to have conversations on what we think the shape of the new normal will be. This is a conversation that we could have for days. So I'm going to point you towards some really, really helpful resources to think about this for yourself outside of this meeting. And at the moment, one of my great sources of wisdom is McKinsey & Co. Go to their website, look at the articles that they're publishing about what they think the new normality is going to look like. And keep asking yourself that question. How is this going to impact on my business? According to McKinsey, there are 7 elements that they think will be important in shaping the next normal. The first 2 of those I want to bypass temporarily, and I want to focus on the 5 remaining factors. The rise of the contact-free economy. For each and every one of you, that is going to impact on your business in some way. Karen has already highlighted the changes that it's going to make to her business, the fact that we are going to be moving more than ever to a cash-free economy. I think Paul Stokes has also talked about the use of websites. Sarah has talked about the use of social media. We know that there's going to be greater government intervention in the economy. We've talked about that very briefly already in terms of things like the furlough scheme. The questions you need to keep asking yourself is, how does this impact on my business? Not just in a negative way, but what opportunities does this present to me? We know that there will be greater scrutiny of business. We've seen that both positively and negatively. We have seen a lot of, initially a lot of very negative response to people like Wetherspoons, who were deemed to have not treated their staff very well, and it remains to be seen how that will impact on their business when we do eventually get out of lockdown. But we've also seen some really positive stories come out of all of this. My great favourite is always Brighton Gin. Their sales for gin have obviously fallen temporarily, so instead they have pivoted their business and they're using the alcohol supplies that they have to produce hand sanitisers. But they've gone one step further than that. For every 1 sanitiser they sell, they're donating to 2 sanitisers to either the NHS or other people who need them. We know that the industry structure is going to change. We know that consumer behaviour has already changed. We know that market positions within industry have already changed, and we know that the sectors that were previously attractive to work in and to be a part of, for example, and Leslie, I hate to say this, but we've had these conversations away from this meeting. You know, the travel industry at the moment is in a very, very difficult place. My challenge to you is always look to where you can find the silver linings, look for the opportunity, keep asking yourself that question: how does this impact on my business, positively and negatively, and what can I do? Because ultimately, the outcome of any crisis is going to be determined by your reaction to it, and there will always be varying possible outcomes. Your business can simply stop. It can survive with your existing business model, but personally I would be most cautious about this. I think if you are just surviving and we go into long-term recession, which I believe we will, I think it's less likely that you will still be there at the end of that long-term recession. So my advice to everybody at the moment is look at how you can adapt your existing business model, look at how you can improve your existing business model, because all crises will offer opportunities to people who are able to plan and act and review in real time. Sorry. So the key questions I would suggest that you are all asking yourselves in terms of identifying where the opportunities may appear for you. Do you know what your biggest business challenge is at the moment? Have you written it down? Have you clearly articulated it? Do you have a clear vision of where your business is going in the next 12 months? But beyond that, do you have a clear vision of where you want your business to go in the next 12 months? And this was particularly pertinent for the client I was working with this week, who is very, very clear about his existing business and where it's going. But more interestingly, he's already looking long term to where he wants to diversify and the opportunities that the current situation is providing for him. So when I say to him, do you think your existing business will still be here post-virus? He's absolutely sure that it is, because he's already planning for the steps that he is going to take. He's identified the opportunities that the current situation is providing to him, and he is already putting in place a strategy to make sure that's where he ends up. But the other questions that I'm saying to people are questions you have to ask yourself. Do I have the skills and experience to take my business to that place, the place I want to be beyond COVID-19? And this comes back to things like recruitment. If you haven't, now is actually a really, really good time to start looking at recruitment, but also looking at what external help you may need. And that may include things like borrowing. Come back to the thing about greater government intervention. There is more borrowing available or more accessibly now than there has ever been before in terms of financial support. It is more accessible now than it has ever been before. There is a lot of bad press about businesses being refused financial support through the loan system, but actually if you talk to the lenders, what they're saying is that the reason most businesses are refused borrowing if they need it is because they are not evidencing that they are running a viable business. If you have asked yourself these questions that you see on the screen in front of you, and you know the answers and can articulate them clearly, if you are looking for external help, it will give you a much, much better base on which to justify why people should work with you. So I haven't got all the answers, but I can work through those questions with you to help you identify where you want to go next, and more importantly, how you're going to get there, not just through the next 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long we stay in lockdown, but for the long term, so that you are able to build that resilient and recession-proof business that I'm sure all of you want to have. So thank you very much for listening to me. My contact details obviously are on that screen in front of you. And I do also understand that a lot of the stuff that I talk about may be business confidential. So, you know, do please come to me outside of this meeting if there's any questions that you've got. But very quickly, do we have time for any questions? That's back to my hosts. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, why not?
Any
We've got a
questions?
lot of people here today. If there's any questions, can you just unmute yourself and wave as well?
And I can't see all of you at the moment, so I think probably you're going to have to shout. Lou, what's your question?
Are you running any more? I know they were very successful. You were running some online sort of webinars. Are you running any of those at the minute?
I'm going to run another 2, but the emphasis on them, I'll be really honest, the emphasis on them is not going to be about business survival. We've done a lot of that. They've been very successful and they have helped a lot of people. But what we really, really, really want to do now is help people move beyond survival. So I'm going to run 2 more seminars, one on Tuesday the 12th of May and one on Thursday the 14th of May. But the basis of them is going to be far more sort of workshop and discursive. It's going to be a lot more about sort of asking these questions, and it's going to be for small groups of people and encouraging people to talk and share ideas about what their new normality is going to look like, the challenges that's going to bring to them. And then starting to work through to solutions for people. So yeah, I'll be promoting those next week. But thank you very much, Lou, for asking that question and reminding me that I am doing more seminars.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi, I have a question. I wondered about your webinars, if you have recordings of the webinars that people can watch back on previous topics that you've covered, and also if they're free or paid webinars.
They're free.
Thank you.
I always say that I'm going to record them, and the last couple I forgot to, because I end up chatting to people before the webinar proper starts, and then I forget to press the record button.
Oh, you need a mic.
Well, with Bizarre, actually, we do normally have we do normally run webinars in pairs, so that we have our Zoom buddies there with us. My Zoom buddy was off duty that day. But to be honest with you, I actually suggest, Lee, you just come along to them, because the idea is that they're going to be much more discursive. And one of the nice things about coming into the webinar situation, the people who've been here, I think will probably, I've been on them before, will probably agree with this, is you actually get to hear what's happening in other people's worlds as well, and the solutions they're finding. And sometimes there will be something that they say, or sometimes you'll make strategic partnerships within that environment. So I just recommend you come along if you can. But I will hopefully we will be getting contact details for our visitors today, so we can share things like webinar dates with you, if that's okay.
Lovely. Yes, please. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you so much, Sandra. If anybody's got any more questions, could you please give her a call or email with